My first experience with the paranormal was actually a string of experiences. I was 16, and my family had just moved into a new home. I loved the house. I had my own room that I picked myself, and I didn't feel any kind of hesitance while unpacking and decorating to make myself feel more at home. Everything was great, at least for the first week. After school, I would get home with my little brother about an hour before my mom. One day, I was the first one into the home. I threw my bag on the kitchen table and found my cat stood frozen, staring at the door in the kitchen that led to our garage. I spoke to my cat. "What are you doing?" I walked towards him, but before I could touch him, a woman's scream came from the garage, and my cat sprinted from the room. I followed, taking my little brother with me outside and calling my mom. My brother insisted he didn't hear anything, and my mom suggested that I must have imagined it, but I knew it was real. Once my mom got home, we checked the house to find nothing. She suggested that I was stressed and watching too many scary movies. I didn't bother to argue any further. I could tell that I wasn't going to be believed, so I grabbed my bag and walked to my bedroom at the end of the hall. I stood in the doorway, freezing in my tracks. My closet door was slid open and hanging from its track, as if someone had tried to pull it off. And my pillow was standing in the middle of the room, a flat, flimsy pillow that I couldn't get to stand if I wanted it to. I yelled for my mom. "Someone's been in my room." She came back, my little brother trailing behind her. I pointed in the room, only to find the pillow now laying flat, as it should have been the whole time. "You must have knocked it off the bed when you woke up this morning." She brushed it off, but I knew I hadn't. And even if I had, how was it standing like that? I played with the pillow for several minutes, trying to mimic the position it had been in, but I couldn't. It wasn't possible. I went to bed that night without a problem. While I did think what had happened earlier that day was strange, I didn't lose sleep over it, but I was prone to walking throughout the night. So like clockwork, I woke around 3 in the morning and got up to go to the bathroom. When I returned to the doorway of my bedroom, I froze. I could see a figure sitting on the edge of my bed. It had no features, just the shadow of a large man. I leaned forward, squinting my eyes, trying to adjust my vision to the darkness of my room. But before I could move any further, the figure stood and charged at me. I have never screamed so loud. My feet came out from under me, and I hit the floor, my hand flipping on the light before I had lost my balance. Nothing was there. My mom and brother were there in an instant, wondering why I was screaming and now crying on the floor. I tried to explain. "You were dreaming," my mom told me. "I was awake. I was up," I tried to argue, but she shook her head. "You must have been dreaming," she insisted. "Go back to bed." I didn't sleep well that night. The next day went fine, that is, until I was back home from school. The house suddenly didn't feel like home to me, and my room did not feel like mine. I felt like I was invading someone else's space, and I was apologetic. I attempted to make a Ouija board out of cardboard and a clear bottle cap. I was desperate to confirm my own experiences. "Hello?" I said quietly, waiting for a response. Nothing. "I'm sorry if we moved into your home. I'll be a good roommate. I'm very clean." I began to ramble, but the bottle cap never moved. I started to feel silly, looking down at the makeshift board, so I pushed it away and climbed into bed. That night, I heard something rattling around. I initially thought it was a large house moth knocking itself into something. I flipped on my bedside lamp and noticed the board on the floor. Only the bottle cap was standing on its side, spinning like a quarter in circles. I let out a breath of air in disbelief, and the cap dropped, once again motionless. I jumped out of bed and grabbed the board, tearing it in half and shoving it in the trash. I kept my lamp on for about an hour before I started to feel tired again. Reluctantly, I flipped the lamp back off and drifted to sleep. I slept with a blindfold on, irritated by the smallest bit of light, So when I woke up again, feeling the cold air of my fan, I assumed I had kicked my blanket off in my sleep. I felt around the bed, trying to find it to cover myself again, but no luck. So I lifted my blindfold and was horrified to see my blanket standing tall above me. I moved quickly, attempting to throw my feet to the side and run to the door, but the blanket fell, and I was forced back to my mattress. A weight suffocated me, as if someone had just laid on top of me. I gasped for breath, trying to scream, but not a sound would escape my throat. I remember my eyelids fluttering as I lost consciousness from the lack of air. That morning, I awoke with my blindfold lifted, my blanket tossed to the side of my bed, and pain taking over my body. I knew I hadn't imagined it. I came out of my room, and I couldn't stop myself from crying when I found my mom getting ready for work in the bathroom. I tried to explain, but she didn't believe me. She never believed me. "You are dreaming," she said to me. "You can stay home from school today. Try and get some rest." I reluctantly nodded and went back to bed, still scared to really go back to sleep. I laid stiff and waited for the sound of my mom and brother leaving for the day. I heard the keys jingle and the door close. I was alone in the home. I rolled onto my stomach and cried into my pillow. "I'm sorry about your mom," a voice said clearly beside me. I gasped and sat up straight. No one. I couldn't handle being alone there. I got out of bed and walked myself to school. We moved out of the house shortly after due to my mom getting married, and all activity stopped, much to my relief. I used to work as a bioburden tech at a laboratory. It's a fancy title for someone who basically washes the germs off medical devices and sees how much nastiness grows off of them. I got to work late that day and had a large study that needed a stupid amount of work to complete. Usually, we're out of the lab around 10 p.m., but I asked if I could stay until the job was done. Towards the end of my coworkers' shifts, I go into the back where we fill out paperwork, and I just start doing my thing. I got the earbuds plugged in, and I'm just chugging along. I finally finish the paperwork, and I'm heading back towards the main lab area. Keep in mind, this place has no windows at all, so there's no outside light getting in. I swear, I hear footsteps as I'm approaching the doorway to the main lab area, so I say out loud, "Staying late too, huh?" I set my equipment down for the last study and look around the lab. No one. Not a soul in sight. I think to myself, that's a little spooky, but I don't think much of it. I have the habit of assuming something very logical has happened before I try to convince myself it was anything in the paranormal realm. Now, when you're working in a hub, your arms and hands are pretty much stuck with your back to the rest of the room. Every time I looked at my work and had my back to the room, I could hear footsteps, loud footsteps. The first few times, I assumed it was someone in the back room or something, but I started walking around the lab afterwards to check, but I couldn't find anyone in the offices or other labs. I couldn't leave. What was I supposed to tell my boss? "Sorry, I think there's a ghost in the lab with me, and I'm freaking the fuck out now." I barely could stand to be in the lab working though, so I called my best friend on the phone and made him talk to me while I worked, so I didn't freak out too much. Later that week, I talked to my coworkers about what happened and learned that they had experiences similar to mine and failed to enlighten me to the small fact that our lab was haunted. Would have been good to know before volunteering to work until midnight. So when I was little, my stepdad used to work the night shift at a gas station on the outskirts of Reno, Nevada, in a nice part of town off the highway before you head up to the Sierra Nevadas and Lake Tahoe. The area back then was fairly new, and the Shell gas station was really nice. My stepdad never had any problems working the night shift, though he did tell me some interesting characters would come in, and he often had regulars that he became friends with. My stepdad was the only one in the shop when he worked the night shift, and he was always told about the ghost that liked to pester the other workers, like turn off lights, open or close the bathroom door, knock snacks off the shelf, the works. My stepdad, being the massive skeptic as he is, didn't believe any of these stories, and because nothing ever happened to him, he just brushed them off. Until one night. My stepdad is working on one of the night shifts, and it's a pretty quiet night. He hasn't had many customers coming through, other than for gas, and since it's a pay-at-the-pump station, hardly anyone comes into the store. So my stepdad is playing on his phone and frequently glances up at the doors or at the security monitor to see if anyone is coming, but the station is deserted. He turns his attention back to his game when he hears the electronic sliding doors open and the sound of the bell above the door goes off. My stepdad puts his phone down and looks up to greet the customer, but he doesn't see anyone. He calls out, but no one answers. He glances at the security camera, but doesn't see anyone else in the shop except him, and there are no cars at the station or in the parking lot. He gets a little weirded out, since the doors have sensors, and the only time they open is if they sense someone approaching them, but he just chalks it up to a prank or some sort of malfunction and gets back to his game. Hello? He hears the voice, clear as day, right in front of him, and his head immediately snaps up to speak to the customer he clearly did not see before. There's no one there. He's even more weirded out, but convinces himself he was either imagining things or that the sound somehow came from his phone or the radio. And then he hears the screams. He said the sound of a woman screaming came out of nowhere, and they were so loud and so chilling, he jumped and dropped his phone. My stepdad is a pretty big guy, about 6'2" and a little hefty, and he doesn't normally get scared over anything. But he said that the screaming terrified him so much he couldn't really think straight. He ran out from behind the counter and checked the aisles, but no one was there. He checked the bathrooms and the maintenance closet, and no one was in there. But the screams were still going, and they were still deafeningly loud. So he thinks maybe there's a woman outside who might be hurt or being attacked. He runs outside to where he thinks the screaming woman is, and there's no one there. The lot is empty. There are no people, no cars, nothing. He checks around the back of the store and does a loop, but he can't find the source of the screaming. And just as suddenly as the screaming had started, it stopped. He goes back inside and checks the security tapes to see if he's missing anything. But other than him running inside and outside of the store like an idiot, he doesn't see anything else, and he's unaware of what to think. The next day, as he's leaving work, he tells them about what happened, brushing it off as just some weird prank, some little shit pulled. But the coworker's response was very different, and even though my stepdad doesn't believe in any sort of paranormal activity, the words stuck with him. Oh, so you've heard of her, too. Hey friends, I just wanted to end this video by thanking you for your continued support. You all mean so much to me, and I hope that you're doing well. Please comment and like if you enjoyed. Take good care, and sweet dreams.